There is a universally despised human habit that every culture on Earth teaches its children to avoid. It destroys reputations, ruins friendships, and is widely considered a clear sign of a toxic, untrustworthy personality. Yet, the exact moment someone leans close to you, glances around the room, lowers their voice to a whisper, and says, "You will never guess what I just found out," your brain simply cannot resist. Before logic, reason, or morality can even intervene, your pupils dilate, your ears perk up, and your nervous system is flooded with a warm, thrilling rush of dopamine. You are sitting in a perfectly safe environment, receiving information that has absolutely no practical use in your daily life. Yet your biological hardware is reacting with the intense, laser-like focus of a prehistoric hunter tracking a wounded animal in the tall grass. It is a profoundly bizarre paradox. Why does the human mind crave drama, rumors, and the hidden failures of others with such an addictive, almost uncontrollable hunger? We like to think of this urge to talk behind people's backs as a modern disease, a personal glitch in our character, or a symptom of a shallow society. But the weirdest part is that this suffocating desire to know other people's secrets did not start as a malicious game or a moral failure. To understand how this happened, you need to imagine a world where knowing the latest rumor did not mean just being part of the popular crowd, but meant you might actually survive the winter. Only this story did not begin as a curse. It started as the most brilliant, desperate, and tragically misunderstood biological software ever installed in the human brain. Picture the Earth roughly 300,000 years ago. It was an unforgiving, brutal landscape where the night was pitch black, the winters were merciless, and the wilderness was teeming with creatures stronger, faster, and deadlier than we were. Early humans were incredibly slow and painfully fragile. We had no sharp claws to fight with, no thick fur to protect us from the freezing wind, and no natural armor to deflect the bite of an apex predator. Surviving alone was not just difficult, it was mathematically impossible. If you wandered away from the fire, you died. If you broke an ankle and had no one to share their scavenged food with you, you died. Our only evolutionary superpower, the single weapon that allowed us to conquer this planet, was the tight-knit tribe. But keeping a group of highly intelligent, deeply emotional apes from killing each other over food, resources, and mates was a monumental biological challenge. If you enjoy discovering the hidden, ancient ghosts that still haunt human behavior today, take a second to subscribe to the channel, because we are diving deep into the shadows of the mind. The absolute necessity of the tribe meant that evolution had to engineer a foolproof way to force humans to stay together, to trust one another, and, most importantly, to identify who was a threat from the inside. For millions of years, our primate cousins, like chimpanzees and baboons, solved this problem through physical touch. They spent hours every single day picking bugs, dirt, and dead skin out of each other's fur. This intense physical grooming released massive amounts of oxytocin and endorphins, the body's natural painkillers and bonding hormones, creating strong political alliances and reducing stress within the troop. But there was a biological problem. As early humans became more successful, our brains grew significantly larger, and our tribes began to expand. Suddenly, there were simply not enough hours in the day to physically groom everyone you needed to trust. If a tribe grew to over 50 people, the physical grooming system completely collapsed. You could not brush the hair of every single hunter and gatherer to ensure they would save you in an emergency. Without a new way to bond, the group would splinter, alliances would break, chaos would ensue, and people would die. And it was right there, on the terrifying brink of social collapse, that something unexpected and revolutionary happened. We did not just invent complex language to talk about where the lions were hiding or how to build a better spear. Evolutionary psychologists and anthropologists, most notably Robin Dunbar, have proposed a fascinating, perspective-shifting theory. Language evolved primarily so we could gossip. Gossip became our vocal grooming. This detail seems extremely small, but it fundamentally changed everything about what it means to be human. With language, you no longer had to spend 2 hours picking parasites off someone's back to prove your loyalty. You could just sit by the warmth of the fire and share a piece of exclusive, valuable social information. You could digitally groom 3, 4, or 5 people at the exact same time just by telling a captivating story. When you shared a secret, you were essentially telling the listener that you trusted them enough to give them privileged information, and their brain rewarded them with the exact same chemical bath of oxytocin and dopamine that a monkey gets from a back scratch. But this still doesn't explain why we specifically love talking about the bad behavior, the scandals, and the downfalls of others. Why is a story about a neighbor's betrayal so much more captivating than a story about their success? The detail that almost nobody realizes is that in a Paleolithic tribe, the absolute greatest threat to your survival was not a saber-toothed cat or a bear, it was the freeloader. Imagine a hunter who constantly eats the meat the tribe catches but pretends to have a twisted ankle when it is his turn to risk his life hunting. Or imagine a member who hoards highly caloric berries in secret while the children of the tribe starve. If you could not identify these selfish individuals, the entire tribe would perish. Gossip was the original, life-saving warning system. By whispering around the fire about who was lazy, who was cheating, who was cowardly, and who was unreliable, our ancestors created an invisible map of trust. Gossip allowed the weak to gang up on the strong bully. It was the invisible glue that held society together and the invisible weapon that punished those who broke the sacred rules of cooperation. If you were gossiped about, your reputation would plummet, and you could be exiled from the cave, facing the darkness alone. Therefore, evolution programmed us to be obsessed with the social standings of others, constantly scanning our environment for rule breakers. And here is where the deep past begins to crash violently into your modern life. For hundreds of thousands of years, this social alarm system worked perfectly because you only gossiped about a very limited number of people, individuals you actually knew intimately, people whose daily actions directly impacted your access to food, shelter, and survival. But the world changed absurdly fast. We traded the African savanna for concrete jungles, small hunting parties for massive corporate offices, and intimate campfires for the infinite, glowing void of smartphone screens. We built a society where we are suddenly surrounded by thousands, sometimes millions, of absolute strangers every single day. We walk through crowded malls, sit in massive lecture halls, and scroll through endless feeds of people we will never meet. The problem is that the organic body and the human brain still carry the exact same cave-dwelling survival marks. The Paleolithic hardware inside your skull does not understand that the famous actor getting a divorce on the other side of the planet has absolutely no impact on your physical survival. It does not know that the coworker making a foolish, embarrassing mistake in a completely different department cannot banish you to the frozen wilderness. It does not comprehend that a viral video of a stranger throwing a tantrum is not a threat to your food supply. To your primitive amygdala, any piece of social information, any scandal, any rumor, triggers the exact same ancient survival protocol. When you scroll through social media and read a juicy piece of drama, your brain floods your system with a highly addictive chemical reward, utterly convinced that you are gathering vital, life-saving intelligence that will keep you safe from the freeloaders of the tribe. The most surprising part comes now, because this massive evolutionary mismatch has turned a vital, life-saving adaptation into an invisible cage and a weapon of mass psychological destruction. In the modern world, the ancient tool of tribe cohesion has violently morphed into cancel culture, cyberbullying, public shaming, and an epidemic of chronic social anxiety. We are constantly policing the behavior of millions of strangers, judging their mistakes, dissecting their flaws, and trying to banish them from a massive digital tribe that we do not even actually belong to. The sheer excess of social data completely fries our nervous system. We are absolutely terrified of making a mistake, of posting the wrong picture, of saying the wrong sentence, because we know exactly how ruthless and unforgiving the human gossip machine can be, having operated it ourselves against others. We are exhausted, running a heavy, outdated survival program in a world that no longer requires it. Our ancestors used the whisper to protect the weak from the tyrant, but today, we often use it to tear people down just to feel a fleeting, empty rush of ancient chemical security. We destroy reputations for entertainment because our brains mistakenly believe we are doing the vital work of tribal maintenance. But when you strip away the thick layers of modern technology, corporate expectations, and the toxicity of social media, This whole story reveals a crushing and deeply moving truth about our fundamental nature. The urge to gossip, the desire to know what is happening behind closed doors, is not a sign that you are broken, weak, or fundamentally flawed. It is not an enemy to be hated. It is the purest confession of our gigantic fragility in the face of the universe. It is the ghost of a desperate, freezing ancestor living inside your chest, fiercely trying to figure out who is safe, who is dangerous, and where you belong in the chaotic web of human existence. We care so much about the drama of others because our species only survived the terrifying darkness of the ancient world by holding on to each other, by knowing exactly who would catch us if we fell. The next time you are sitting across from a friend, the room is loud, and you lean across the table, lowering your voice to a hushed tone to share a secret you promised you would never tell. Pay close attention to that thrilling, familiar knot of nervous energy in your chest. Remember that your intense desire to whisper is just your biology echoing the greatest and most desperate survival strategy ever invented. We endlessly talk about each other because, in the end, we are terrified of being without each other.